Hi, I'm Brian HIBBS, owner of Comics Experience in San Francisco. The Comics Experience Graphic Novel Club, we pick a brand new book every single month. The whole staff votes on it. It's what we think is the best comic that comes out at any given month. Each one of them comes with a special signed book plate, and we also do these interviews with the creators. If you're interested in comics, in art, this is a great program, and we'd love it if you could join us. So click it through and join the club. Otherwise, enjoy the interview. I want to welcome everyone to a very special episode of the Graphic Novel of the Month Club. We've got a really fantastic book this month. It's very thoughtful. It's a beautiful memoir, and we're very lucky to be joined here by international activist and artist WEIWEI. Hello, how are you? Hi, WEIWEI. Oh my gosh. I'm sorry, I'm really nervous.
That's fine. It's just, you can call me I or WEIWEI, doesn't matter.
Very good. I will call you WEIWEI is what I will do. I really thought that this was a fantastic piece of comic book making. I really enjoyed it tremendously. And so the first question always is, why comics? Of all the ways that you can express yourself, what appealed to you about doing this as a comic?
Well, I think the comic come from a very early experience. When you see someone like my father who can use just a pen and a piece of white paper to start to make a drawing. And, those simple lines, it's almost like a poetic image, because you see the reality can be abstract into just a simple line, and that line tells so much. So I started to realize when I was very young to see this kind of miracle happens, because my father studied art in Paris in the early 1930s. And so when he started doing those things, he was being seen as the public enemy, exiled in most remote province, Xinjiang. And in this Gobi Desert, we are living under a dugout, basically very, very extreme conditions. So he was forced to as someone to clean the public toilets for the villagers. And then I don't know what it really did, but I see him and can make a drawing like that, which nobody can achieve. So that surprises me, leaving me a very strong impression. And also at that time, there's not so much other media besides we call it a little boys book or little children's book, which is maybe 1/4 of the size of A4 paper, and on those little drawing books, you can see revolutionary stories, or some stories reflects this kind of revolutionary spirit. So, but the drawings are made by professionals, and the story always catches children's attention. They don't understand the meaning, or they may not even care about the meaning of the propaganda, but they really like the drawing. I'm one of them, just reading those kind of materials when we growing up. There's no other sense to look at this. Of course, there's not even television or films, but those books, almost every household would have it. So we always had this kind of habit to look at the pages, and which I always think is very interesting, and it always structure your imagination.
Yeah. The propaganda comics that you were reading, how did you get them? Were they distributed by the government, or were these things that were for sale?
In China, there's one distributor called the New China. New China. This is the name called the New China, Xinhua, or People's Association. So, everything are distributed by the government. There's no single print, not even a single word, not distributed by the government.
Interesting. And one of the things you talk about in the book a couple of times is about how when the government makes art, it's very difficult for it to be valid art, because the government's interests are very different than the interests of art. Was this a thing that you perceived when you were young, or did you just take it for granted what you were seeing in these comics?
Well, there's no other publications. That's the only thing has been distributed to people can spend like a few cents to buy a book, and there's no way even to judge it.
Yeah, you're the very first panel of Zodiac. It starts with your father saying, "Don't read." Is that partly a reaction to the propaganda that you were being given?
No, nothing to do with those propagandas. Actually, the book is, I just, because I talk about my early relations with this kind of drawings, and it's just one way of expression to make drawings and to illustrate and to create some narratives and to tell a story.
When did you first encounter comics that were not propaganda?
I would say all comics are propaganda. I never, I would say, propaganda a different way. Even you look at the children's book, you see, how the parents want to educate the children. And mostly you say it's kind of propaganda.
Yeah. Do you think that a memoir though is inherently propaganda? Because it strikes me that
I will not directly refers to that. I would say if a book writing or drawing or whatever the book is really has a content, and that reflects our authors or someone's idea.
one of the things that struck me is that there's almost no native Chinese comics that have made it into the United States. Very, very, very few. The main ones that have been martial arts comics from Hong Kong. And I look at the same time at Japanese manga, Korean manga, where those comics are out there widely and are actually changing American culture as people read the points of view of those Asian countries. Do you think that there's a mistake from the Chinese publications to not make the material wider available to the rest of the world so that those points of view can be communicated?
Like I would say in the world, in terms of those kind of publications, are really divided by the culture and by the political situation. And there are many wonderful books, even the propaganda books with fantastic illustrations. But they have a very different ideology or sense about right or wrong, or so it can't be popular in the West because it's just simply not same kind of stories, or people would feel disconnected to certain ideology or emotions.
But I would say the same thing is certainly true with Japanese culture, and yet because of the popularity of manga in the United States, I can see that Japanese manga is changing how pop culture comes across in the United States, and changing what American audiences think about things. It just seems like I don't want to say a missed opportunity, right? Because government propaganda is not an opportunity. But did what I say there make any sense at all, or am I babbling?
I never read any Japanese manga myself. I see a lot of children make drawings looks like the manga type of drawings. The kind of little hero with a big eye shining or something. But for me, it's very much like a Mickey Mouse. It's very stylish, and I don't know. It's why I don't know why it catches so many young people's imagination. I have no idea.
Yeah.
That's why I think all arts are propaganda. If you become a popular, it reflects certain kind of meaning there.
Sure. Let me try to phrase it maybe in a slightly different way. One of the things that I liked so much about ZODIAC was, well, the structure of the book, that you structured it around the Chinese zodiac, and then you've used each of those 12 parts of the zodiac to not only illustrate a part of your life, but to illustrate what's going on politically. Like you did something with a very multi-phased manner. Now, I think that this probably will teach more people about Chinese culture than something that's more staid. I think more people will read this than, say, your prose memoir to get things about important parts of Chinese culture in terms of familial relationships, in terms of how you feel about your ancestors, or how you feel about old objects, right? Like those are different cultural things that I've learned about from reading this book that I don't know that I would have learned about in a prose book. So from that point of view, it seems to me that it would be better if China let more of the culture get out to the other countries.
Well, those kind of culture, it's we talk about a environment. This book, I would say it's not a forest, but more like a bushes. You know, you have all kinds of things come out from bushes, mushrooms, grass, or flowers, or bees. You know, you never know what you get. It's quite kind of wild growing situation, but that's environment. But in authoritarian state, they never really allowed you know, this kind of massive nature supporting system. So after this kind of heavy censorship, you want to have one type of language and forms, which is a pity because it limits people's imagination, and it just not offering enough nutrition to the people growing up, you know, who grows. And that happens in a sectarian state, but also happens in the West. We see our West, you know, always promote individualism and freedom, and we call it a democratic society. But if you look at the children's book, it's yes, of course, there's a lot of good ones, but still, very often you see very banal type of, you know, stereotype of books, which doesn't really offers, cannot really give enough thinking or questioning of the condition of today.
Sure. No, absolutely. I mean, I think a lot of that is that publishers are far more interested or worried about capitalistic and commercial values. In other words, they want to be able to sell a book that they're making money off of rather than sell a book that is expressing, you know, a human emotion in the right way. What I will say is that in the medium of comics, I think that Western children comics are actually really fantastic these days. That the most popular things tend to be like Raina Telgemeier, who does memoir like this. It's not, you know, it's not identical, and it's aimed at a kid's audience rather than an adult audience, but that is actually expressing things that are real, and kids really, really, really are attracted to that. I have a store full of comics here, and we sell comics to children, and the ones they want, what the kids want, is not the propagandist ones, as you would say, but the more human and real ones, the ones that make an actual connection, the ones that show them different cultures, that show them different ways of thinking, that expand their mind. And I'm really encouraged by the fact that kids can take things that way.
Well, it's not easy to make a book. If you think a book is some kind of art form or literature or poetry, you need an author. And, you know, this author is very important. Very often we see the book are made poor for children because the author misunderstands the children's ability to have a maybe even higher level, higher ability than the adults. So we often trying to prejudge, you know, what is good for the children. And that is some kind of prediction. I think it's almost like a censorship. You know, it's a different way to say what children should read, which I think is a problem.
Yeah, I guess the point that I was trying to make is that it at least in my experience in San Francisco, right, that children want to be challenged. Children don't want what they see all the time, and I always feel encouraged by that. You know, I always feel that, you know, as Martin Luther King says, that the arc of history ultimately bends towards the good, and I think a lot of that is children, and children seeing what the world is and how it can be. So
Yeah, I come back to the how the world is and on the how the imagination of the riches, and that very much dominated by the adults and the market and the capitalism, and trying to attract children just like use candies or use some kind of fast food. This is reality. That's the reality. That's why I think in general, those books are poor. I'm sure there's great ones. Please send me 2 copies. What do you think is really good?
sure, I can do that. Yeah, no, absolutely, I can do that. So let's talk a little bit about the creation and execution of Zodiac. One of the things I noticed when I was doing a little research on this was that there's kind of a multimedia aspect to Zodiac. That you did a series of statues, you did a series of Lego paintings. You've done the graphic novel. Maybe there's more things that I'm not aware of. What was your thinking in doing it as a multimedia kind of thing, particularly when they're not explicitly connected to one another?
As artist, you're just a living creature. I never really planned anything. I only focus on what I will do on the next. So I first did the Zodiacs because they relate to, I never really believe in Zodiacs, or like most Chinese, they are more feel relate to it. I'm lived like outsider, but once I realized this kind of zodiac sculptures was looted by British and French soldiers in the about 250 years ago, and so that is an old story. But every Chinese under government using that as a patriotic type of education to say, okay, that belong to us, but now they loot it, then they sell it in the auction house, and to buy it back to, it's almost like to some kind of revenge, which is, I think, is ridiculous, because in the Qing Dynasty, the palace they looted is not even, Han people, but rather someone from outside. We call the Manchu people who conquered Chinese kingdom, and it's an invader, or so I think that is interesting, because we always rewrite the history. But these zodiacs relate to every Chinese, because Chinese people, they would never ask how old are you. They would ask what sign is your zodiac sign. So, I like that. I think, you have to jump 12 years. You're either 12 or 24 or 36. And which, 48 or 60, you only have a few, like, you can imagine that. And you can compare to the other people's zodiac sign. A lot of stories relate to this 12 animals, so I think that's pretty interesting to create something which everybody can feel they can somehow relate to. And so that's the first public sculpture I ever did. And it's being shown in the palace, in front of the Palace Hotel, from Central Park. And the mayor, Bloomberg, gave an opening talk, because that time I was in secret detention, so I couldn't attend it. So that gradually, that story become classic and modern and political, and also relate to history and social discussions. And gradually I start to build it with that. Later I build it with Legos. which is a new media I liked because it's different from painting. So mine says Lego paintings, which is completely construction, and every Lego piece are digital and pixels. So it more relate to computers than relate to anything else. So that's how this gradually developed. And the stories, basically, the stories are all my personal stories or the stories related to China's past and culture, which is can be very rich, sometimes can be even looks surreal or even some unbelievable. But basically, it's by two other authors. So one is John Luca, and another is Electra, and they are couples, and they have been following me, my activities. They're activists and a very good writer and illustrator. So they have been doing a lot of portraits of me before they got involved with this ZODIAC project. So of course we share stories, and they know me so well, and they structure it together with the concept of ZODIACs and my memo. So that's how it comes out.
So your level of direct involvement here, other than living this life, right? Obviously, this is your story. You live this life. But did you say you didn't write a script for this? You didn't lay it out. It's Gianluca and Elettra who did that. Is that correct?
Basically, it's they did all the labor works, but the quotes, the ideas, and the stories, and the images, and also the concepts, I work on that with them. And of course, I always have to communicate with them. And also I did the last editing because there could be a lot of things need to be corrected. Yeah. The most, all the drawings is by John Lucas. And I did the cover. And of course, I think I need a cover, strong cover, and yeah.
So I'm one of the reasons I ask this is because it's really a deft job of taking each of the signs of the zodiac and applying it to an individual story in your life, and that seems to me the kind of thing that only you can really do, rather than having someone from the outside go, oh, I think this part of your life fits in with this zodiac. I guess what I'm asking is the structure of putting it together, of breaking it into 12 chapters, and in chapter 1 it's going to be this, and in chapter 2 it's going to be that. How much active input did you have into that process?
Well, mostly they are doing that, but I would give them some stories which relate to, because I know Chinese mythology and the stories, I would lead them into different parts, different animals. But they did the sewing together, to pack it together.
Yeah. You work quite often with many other people doing work. Zodiac here, or the sunflower seeds, where you have 1,600 artisans hand painting the porcelain. Alcatraz is a great example where you weren't even in the space. You were in China at the time, and other people have to make it. I'm really curious about the nature of you as the artist versus individual artisans.
Well, I'm working in every level. I'm working as someone conceptually, very precisely to work with whoever work with me. And I come to the very final measurement or lines or drawings. I'm an architect. I don't build the house myself, but I come to every, every corner, every and how high the door should be, and it's all the details. And also, I'm a film director. I don't very often. Sometimes I use camera. Most time there's camera person or another dozen directors working with me when we did the human flow. So it's we are living in industrial society. I don't have the liberty to spend my time just working on pages after pages, because I do maybe 20 things at the same time. But I'm very precisely, very I would say very picky on my aesthetic judgment, and also people work with me. They know this is the most crucial to make a work become a book or work. So I never accept a work which is not mine, but existing, because I'm not enjoying that. The work I would call as my work only because I would think they reflect my kind of judgment or control of it.
Absolutely. I'm talking to the Italians tomorrow about the making of the comics, so I'll get their perspective on this as well. But what was the depth of the editing process that you did to make the final book? How many changes did you ask for, I guess, is part of what I'm asking.
Well, if you come to the changes, that means already too late. The are structured already in years, so we have to go through the process. But the final is only about right or wrong, or the way to basically, I like John Lucas' drawing. I think his language, of course, we discuss the style. He can draw different ways. But I wanted the story not like, the kind of very expressionist or too, but a very, how do you say, very like the book I read while I was young, simple lines, very almost plain, but to let the narrative comes out. So that's how I can accept this style. Otherwise, it's other styles I may not fit into my judgment. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a very photorealistic nature to the art here, and in fact, in many places, I could see that it was literally a photograph that he had redrawn or however he had done. Did you suggest to him particular images to use, or was that just their call?
Never. Yeah. Once we come to collaboration in China, we have an old saying: if you work with somebody, you have to trust it. If you have a little not trust it, do not work with it. So why you need that kind of struggle? So I like his drawing. I trust him. Of course, I would give him some suggestions. I would introduce certain styles to him to show the book I liked, from the earlier time. This wonderful, how do you see, illustrator from China. I introduced to him, and actually in the ZODIAC book, on the call section, he basically used the that image, this farmer with a cow and this cat in front of this cow. So that image basically it's this illustrator's image, and we trying to pay respect to the past. Doesn't matter it was a revolutionary story, but a lot of beautiful revolutionary stories, heroic stories, and the human stories. So there's I'm very happy he likes that person's drawings so much, and we both think we cannot draw as good as this guy. It's not possible because this guy he's just so good. His name is He Youzhi. Yeah, actually we introduced in the book on the calm chapter.
Yeah, I remember that. Do you you say that so much of what you do is conceptual? How much actual execution of art do you do in on a daily basis, I suppose?
You mean use my hands?
Yeah, as opposed to your brain. Yeah.
Everything I did is use my brain, and every work I did is use my brain. But why I don't do painting? I don't want to dirty my hands. Why I do Lego? Anybody can structure it. I like this kind of detachment with the work, and I don't like this kind of personal flavoring there. This kind of habit. Actually, I little bit hate the one who just trying to show his own accent or habit. So yeah, I just try to make it simple.
Interesting. It's fascinating because most of what I value as a person who sells books is that individual craft, the individual thing that someone brings to a work to make it their own work. What's it that they say that there's only 7 stories? Maybe it's a dozen. I don't know, but how you execute that thing is, to me at least, one of the most fascinating parts of the creation of art. But I very much appreciate that your view is different.
Yes, I'm not only doing differently, and I try to make all my works different from each other. I do porcelains, I do carpentry, I do stone carving, I do iron casting, I do films, and the comic books, and I try to give up the things I'm already familiar with. I don't like this kind of one artist just does the same thing for the whole generation or even 3 generations doing the same kind of thing. For me, that is lacking of challenge and imagination. And, it's that's what I disassociate with myself with.
Do you think that there's any value though in the mastery of a craft, in terms of the ability to draw, right? Like the first time you draw a cat, right? It looks sort of like a vaguely cat-like subject, and then the 10th time it looks more like a cat, and then the 100th time you draw a cat, then it becomes more realistic and more true. As you practice more and more and more, you get better at executing the vision. Do you see a value in that, or?
I don't think so. I think if you look at the children's drawing, they often make great drawings than the so-called the educated people. They're very innocent. They just know how to draw, and they are very very brave because they don't know what should stop them. So you should always learn from the children. It can be very sophisticated.
Oh, I agree with that, absolutely. I I wonder though that in a capitalistic society where most people don't have the freedom to create art in anything other than their spare time. In other words, because you can't commercialize your art, it means that there's less art being produced. Do you follow what I'm suggesting there? Did that make sense? I always wonder when I ask these questions if they make any sense.
There's many levels if we have to talk about, but I think mostly it's about on the values, how we judge. There's social values, there's so-called artistic values, and there's also human values and political values. Very often, those are not the same, not on the same level, but very often the mainstream are dominated by a single value that is dangerous for not just the poor, but dangerous for the society.
Yeah, I guess what I'm asking is that given the nature in a capitalistic society where you don't have free time to make art, that you have to work to pay for your rent, to pay for your food, to pay for your family, and that becomes the main value that people take from their lives, right? Or not that they take, but that they have to apply in order to survive. They don't get to make art. That it's not a freedom that most people have to make art.
Well, the question is, you think you have the freedom, but still you cannot make art. Art is not because you think you have freedom. Very often, art is come from someone have to with a very restrained situation and a limited resource, and to have something come out from these kind of difficulties. That in literature, in poetry, and in very good art is always like that. So people often have a misunderstanding to say, okay, we have the freedom and we can create a great art, which I think is a lie. It's not true.
What is it that that makes art great? I know that's a really broad question. That's probably ridiculous.
But it's a very solid question. The so-called art field, I personally feel is so-called great. It shows something impossible. It shows something we cannot predict. It comes from someone's experience, which it's not commonly you cannot commonly give a form. It's unique, and those are very essential. And it's not about popularity. It's not about the book win some kind of awards or being put on publisher, bestseller. It's nothing to do with that.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I guess I would maybe reframe my question in terms of who has the ability to make art, because it strikes me, and you please tell me that I'm wrong about this, but that in your world, I don't mean you specifically, but in the fine art world, in the big project world, that it's only people who have access to resources who are able to make that kind of art. I guess part of the thing I might ask is sort of the difference between the accessibility of a comic, where this is a very inexpensive object that anyone can buy, versus art that's in museums, for example, where to go to a museum, just to visit a museum one time, costs more than this book does at many, many museums. Is there What do you think about that? I guess it's just sort of the accessibility of art versus the commerce part of art.
First, I think when we talk about value, we talk about the people's judgment on how they think is valuable. So I think through education or through some kind of mainstream propaganda or the capitalism, they will always value what sells high is more valuable. It's which I think is this is really not just questionable, but wrong. A great poetry can never really sell. And we all remember those great writers. But why artwork have to sell like sky high? But still, we're living in a very twisted, strange society. And a little comic book can be very meaningful, can be very a great piece of work to be remembered, but maybe just not popular. So yeah, it's hard to use this kind of price to judge any work.
Sure, no, absolutely. I just I always wonder about people who get to make art, and get to make is a strange statement. But people who go to school, for example, right? To go to school to do art, that's hundreds of thousands of dollars in America, at least. And so then it strikes me that the art that they produce is often a reflection of that capitalistic investment, if you see what I mean, right? That they're maybe talking less about individual points of view than something that they think they can make money back so they can pay student loans back.
Sure. This is capitalism is a huge machine. It will crash any other kind of forms. So once you're into that process, very often you can see what kind of product you will become.
Yeah, it's tricky. As a person who sells art, I struggle with it all the time because I see so many cartoonists who don't make any money, and they're struggling so hard to be able to express themselves, and the opportunities just aren't there for them. And it's the one thing I love being in a capitalistic society, but I also despise the fact that people don't get all the opportunities to express themselves that they want because they can't afford to.
Not only they cannot afford to, that is under is how do you call it, underestimate. It's really they're not even allowed to. Many opinions you just simply cannot even express in today's situation. You must know it, so.
Yeah, it's very true. I have a question about your personal life in terms of your father was labeled a dissident. Your whole family was exiled into the desert and living in a hole in the ground. And yet 10 years later, you were able to travel to America and go to art school. How were you able to achieve those things?
I did not achieve anything. Actually, only what I have achieved is I made the decision I have to leave China. And, if any direction, doesn't matter, it can be India or Russia or Korea or wherever I can across the border, I would leave. And so, my early not education, but my early experience told me that it's dangerous for me to stay because I can sense I'm a person with this kind of rebelling spirit. That's what is the worst disease if you have that in China. So I will not say accident, but I had a girlfriend whose family immigrants to United States before 1949, and then I followed her help, her to went to Philadelphia, then Berkeley, then New York City. And I come from China, and it's very hard to even survive in the United States as a foreign student doesn't really speak words of English. So I just hanging around there and pays my rent and doesn't do anything almost. I call myself as artist. So that's gradually, I just trying to survive. It's not, I'm not so interested in, American dream or whatever, because it's such a contradiction to, the communist, the early education. Even I don't like that education, still I'm not very convinced about American dream. I would say that. So after 12 years, I went back to China, become a foreigner again. China totally changed to become a very capitalistic society, but politically still communist. So it make me very uncomfortable because it's a double uncomfortable. And this authoritarian society with this capitalism ideology. So I, again, in my nation, I become a misfit again. So I did some architecture works, which can earn some money, and other works, publishing underground books or organize some kind of art shows to trying to promote local culture. And until one day I be recognized by West, basically, as artists, again, giving me shows. So, yeah, that's the story, to make it simple, yeah.
Yeah. Is it, and being recognized by the West, is that part of why you were able to survive in China during those 12 years, because you couldn't just be disappeared, because people were looking for you and paying attention to you? Is that a fair statement, or am I off somewhere there?
I always think I was identified by Chinese authority and also recognized by the West, both on wrong reasons. So but you have to survive and you have to work with the given condition. So political situation, East or West or China or United States, so it's almost, for me, it's all like a ready-made. So I have to, as an individual, I have to deal with it.
I understand. How does your mother feel about you as an artist in relationship to your father? I mean, you both ended up being dissidents. Did that make her scared? Did that make her proud? I'm curious.
My father was when I growing up, he was being seen as enemy of the state, and later he got rehabilitated and he become a hero, like a national patriotic poet. The national patriotic is still on the highest level, and myself become a dissident. How do you say dissident? My mother never have any kind of She never even recognized my work as art. She would laugh to see what I did can be called art. And I totally agree with her. I think what I did is what I did. I don't even care I'm doing art or not. Till today, I don't really care. So I think there's much bigger mission than just being an artist. And so that's how the situation is.
That makes a lot of sense to me. Um, uh, I am almost done here. I'm almost out of time, but let me ask you two more big questions. The first thing I'd like to ask you about is AI and the way that AI has the ability to potentially democratize art, but also to take away from the ability of artists to make a living doing it, right? Because the capitalist imperative is to get work done as cheap as possible. And if you can just speak a couple words into a computer and have it spit out some art, then what do you need artists for? Yeah. Does that concern you for the future of creativity in the world, or are you more optimistic about the future and the potential of AI?
I Well, sorry, my name is also AI, but
I know. I know.
yeah, but I'm not concerned at all. I think what AI can do is just exactly what art cannot do, and what AI cannot do is exactly what art should do. So of course, AI would make a lot of people losing their jobs, or make their skills seems not even relevant anymore. But that's exactly the AI did a good thing, because it challenges our humanity and our human spirit, which AI can never really achieve. And it is a challenge, but for many people. But for me, I don't think that would affect my way.
Yeah, sure. Did you? I know you have a thing that's happening at Piccadilly Circus now, where you're asking questions, 81 questions of AI. Have you been surprised by any of the answers that you've gotten?
No, not at all. It's very banal answer. It's just it's a tool. A tool cannot jump itself to create a machine. You have to use the hand and the human's mind to create anything very simple. So, but still, a great tool. A great tool can solve many problems. Can help you. The challenge you play chess game or Chinese Go game, and and it get complicated. Analyze in a second, which take a student maybe one semester to come out this kind of conclusion, or make many professors lost their job, because most times they did is it's just a human AI, but not. But that only means we are very easy to share the information and knowledge, but the information and knowledge even quickly be shared still doesn't make a better society. We are still human. We are still have our own joys and our fears, and those things. AI doesn't have a will. It doesn't care. It's cold. It doesn't have a heart and a lung, and it just doesn't even. So it's no comparison. I don't see how. I can see many people are scared about it, because it questions their ability of existence, but then should not be the art.
Sure. I guess part of my concern would be that resources that could be given to actual human artists having actual human thoughts are instead being given over to to computer thoughts, which is just, in a best case scenario, regurgitation, right? I don't think that AI is able to make the leap between one concept and another concept the way that a human can. And it's certainly not going to relate it to how we feel, how we live, what we need to succor our souls. But those resources being taken away, I think are the danger. Because, you know, in a capitalistic society, of course, the pendulum always is swinging back and forth, and it always ends up way too high at one point before it swings back to the middle again.
Well, why electricity being discovered? You know, that's a fact of everybody's life, but still, you know, we still like to have darkness. We still like to have candles, and we still, you know, appreciate the place, the area or corner with no electricity. You know, so yeah, same thing. You know, it's just different conditions.
That's kind of a beautiful answer, actually, and I really appreciate that. My last question before I move on to the audience questions here will be, one of the things I talk to a lot of comic book artists about is the blank page, about when they stare at a blank piece of paper, they have to start drawing lines, like how they start doing that. For a writer, it's often a blinking cursor on their computer screen. What's your blank page? Is it all in your head? Or are there tools that you use to bring your blank page to an actual concept?
Well, most often my blank page will remain blank.
Okay. And how so? How do you mean that?
And that means we call so-called human creativity. And if I look at it twice, very often it's really limited to our own, you know, it's our own imaginations or human conditions. And very often it's not so necessary.
Okay, that makes sense. What I guess I'm trying to get to, how do you go from having a concept, for example, in Alcatraz, you have a space and you thought, oh, I'd use there's a little bit about it in here. Oh, maybe I'll use the kites and dragons. How do you go from that to the actual execution of the idea, though?
You use some big words, execution of an idea. It's so easy. It comes very handy, and since I never think of my idea even it's a good idea. It's just helped me to pass in some time, or to, yeah, it's true. It's helping me to, you know, not just sitting on the chair all the time, but to actually put my hands on something, or help me to develop my curiosity in terms of how materials are being used. And you know, very often it's about understanding the imperfection of this kind of process. So I would say nothing glamorous, but it's very often it's quite boring.
Well, there's value in boredom, though, you know.
Well,
I think
it may entertain others. You know, we all need to be entertained, I guess. Yeah. So.
Yeah. So actually, that's a really good segue to the audience questions. I actually don't have a lot. Oh, I think people were actually anxious to try to ask you questions. I know I certainly was. So I really only have two different people who submitted questions. The first one's from Julie McNeil, who's who's also a comics artist herself. One of the questions that she asks is, and let me just kind of rephrase it. What are there any comics that you follow? Probably not, but I would more broadly ask: do you pay attention to pop culture at all, or is it not worth your time?
Of course, I pay attention to pop culture before it become a culture. So I'm on internet all the time, on Instagram, on Twitter. So I see the world shifting in front of me, all those facts, all those events, and all those, like a theater. So, but I don't pay much attention to pop culture because once it's already become a culture, which it doesn't really have this kind of stimulating or kind of sharp feelings or emotions but I pay a lot of attention to reality.
Understood. Do you follow any comic artists at all? Do you?
Not at all. I never really look at it. I look at the covers because I have to pass in Berlin. I have to pass at least 5 bookshops. And in the window, I will see some covers, but I kind of sense there's a different culture and always different styles, but very often in the so-called children's store, the styles are so similar because there's so many beautiful ways in the history, and in the medieval time or in the Song Dynasty or Yuan Dynasty, they're great paintings or drawings, and we lost the ability to still carry this very impressive human treasure to give to the children, to introduce to the children. But rather to have a quick, like 3 minutes, reading or something, just quickly before they to put them into the bed to sleep. I don't think that is. I don't think that's good.
Yeah. Have you ever given any thought to doing more things that are aimed specifically at children? Versus,
I like to take a challenge. Yes, actually, I'm start to thinking about if I do one, what kind of story and what kind of expression it should be. It's just just to trying to give a different type of approach.
Yeah. No, I would love to see that, because I agree with a lot of your thoughts about the way that we teach children. And as I say, I find that children, because they're unformed yet, they're unfinished, are the most open to a variety of things. And that if you can catch them when they're young, if you can put ideas in their brain when they're young, those can grow into amazing things and in directions you would never have thought of.
I think so. I totally agree. I think to underestimate our human ability or intelligence or sensitivity when they are as a children is a mistake. Yeah. So very often we see a lot of guidelines to say, okay, children cannot see this, or this is not fit for children. I think that is really shows how scared those adults have no imagination and poor education in art. And
Yeah. In fact, I want to bring it back to this particularly. I want to say I thought of everyone in the book, I actually thought that your son Lau came off almost the best with his inquisitive questions about art, his interest in how the world worked, and I thought it really captured a child's sense of wonder very, very well.
Well, actually, law is much profound than I can imagine. This book doesn't really show his mental ability. I feel a little bit shy if he sees the book. I know what he would feel, and I think he may be angry of me. So,
Oh, well, I don't know. I thought, I mean, just the shadow of him on the wall, I thought that shadow was very impressive from what came across. So good job on you as a father, and on his mother as well for raising a child who seems to be inquisitive and thoughtful and philosophical. Very, very good job there. Let's see. Julie has another question that I want to ask. There's actually two more that I want to ask from her. Many artists were mentioned in Zodiac, such as Pablo Neruda and Joseph Beuys. So I'm pronouncing it wrong, I'm sure. All of these had an influence on WEIWEI's ideas. Can WEIWEI recommend any Chinese women artists working today, or even in the past, that we should know about?
of course, there's a lot, but I'm not good in giving names. In art, I will not say not in the West, the women and men or color or race become so how do you say being talked like this, like oh you're vegetarian or you're well, we don't do that like that. Many people they don't eat meat their lives, but they will never call them a vegetarian. It's not a problem, and it's you're good. You can be a great poet just by what they're writing. So, and I think that is to really to name those things. I think it shows some kind of social unbalanced problem. So
I understand. Mm-hmm. I understand. Yeah, I think it's. I haven't asked Julie why she asked this question, but I suspect it's because she herself is a woman making art and she's looking for inspiration. I suspect that the basis of that question.
Women great. Women has better sensitivity than men, because you have to give children and you care and your love is your job. So this is great. Not like a man, this can be trained very differently. So
yeah, no, very much so. The final question that I'm going to do from Julie, and I'm going to paraphrase this quite a bit. Let me tie it into what I thought of Zodiac itself. Again, I mentioned earlier that I thought that it very much showed me history, showed me a way of thinking, showed me things that I wouldn't have seen. And despite the government of China being authoritarian towards you, imprisoning you, beating you, disappearing people around you, it still comes across in reading this that you very much love China. At least the culture part of it, if not the actual authoritarian world that it exists in the real world. So her question was, the last page has you giving the fuck you sign, but do you miss China?
Well, I'm familiar with China. I would say my ancestors, they all rooted in China, and I speak Chinese language. If this interview in Chinese, I will be, much better on my side. So I'm in very uncomfortable condition as a foreigner or as some kind of one being exiled. But still, there's no complaint. That's life. That's a real life. So I would not say I love China, but at least I don't hate China. And I say China is a nation or race people are trying to survive. And survive is a way, and maybe some of them think that is the right way, and the others, they don't even care, or they think that's wrong. It's always like that in every society.
Yeah. But you do have an affection for these things yourself. I mean, it comes across in the book, I think. Unless I'm reading it wrong. I mean, it's possible that I...
No, I will not. I think your judgment can be the final judgment. Every reader has their own judgment, and I never even have give a thought about it. But I kind of agree with you.
Yeah. Okay. Very good. The last audience question I have is from Terry Hu. I thought this was a sweet question. What happened to the cats that you had in your studio in Beijing when the authorities demolished it? And do you have any cats anymore? We know that you love them.
There's once authority destroyed 2 of my studios, but there's one still remains existing, and the cats are still active in my, I would call it my home studio, and being taken really good care of. And of course, some are old and passed away after, a longest stay there for about 22 years. So it's very long life, I think. And they all been loved. And we look at them, think they are a saint, they are creature, and we would not understand, but fully, highly respected. So, yeah. And they bring us many, many lessons. And, so it's wonderful.
Yeah. And do you currently still have cats? Do you keep them as...
Oh, yes. In Portugal, we have 7 cats. And
wow.
In London, we have 2 cats. So, yeah, cats, we don't take care of cats. Cats taking care of us, They are very independent.
Yeah, absolutely
wonderful.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. Okay, and so to kind of wrap this up, as I said, I have a first question that's always the same. I have a last question that's always the same. This is a series of interviews with people who make art. I've been doing this for 9 years now. We've got some 300 different creators. They're all comic book people. But one of the things I hear very often from our viewers is that they want to make art. Again, particularly comics. They want to make comics, and they're afraid. They're either afraid of how it's going to be taken, or they don't think they're good enough, or they have imposter syndrome. They just don't know how they can make art. So what would be the recommendation to a young artist for how they can effectively get over themselves and to make art, to produce art? This can be something practical, or this could be something philosophical. But what might be your answer to that for someone who would like to make art and doesn't know?
Very often we think people ask a question, what would I do when doing art, or what I should do? I would say, if you're cats, you're a cat. If you're a donkey, you're a donkey. Just be yourself. And, a donkey cannot be a cat. A cat cannot be a dog. It's not possible. So just be yourself, and, then making some comic books is just a byproduct of being yourself, and it should always be good. So,
very good. That makes a lot of sense. The difference between cats and donkeys and humans is that we're self-aware of ourselves, and
yeah, we are too self-conscious, and we are also always think we are not good enough. We have to be someone else. So that kills people.
Well, very good. I want to really profoundly thank you for taking the time to talk to us today.
So I have a chance to talk to you.
Yeah, and I really loved this. I hope that you continue to look at comics as an art form and perhaps produce something else in the future, because even though this was done in collaboration, this is really a work of pretty great sensitivity, I thought, and pretty great use of the medium of comics and how time works and things that other art forms don't do nearly as well as comics. So I just want to say thank you very much for this, and thank you for taking the time, and thank you for all the signed copies that you were able to provide for us as well, because I know you are a very busy man, and
No,
I appreciate this.
I love to do that. I love to have real communication, and also I really appreciate my two collaborators. They are giving the warmth and the temperature to the book, and I fully appreciate it.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Take care.